Hi, I'm Gail Sokol, and on today's show, we will discuss the Semifreddo.
Welcome to Baking Radio. Learn the art and science of baking with author, educator, and award-winning chef, Gail Sokol. Whether you've been baking your whole life or you're brand new to the world of baking and you're looking to build your confidence and learn new skills in the kitchen, you're in the right place. This is Baking Radio.
On today's show, we will discuss the Semifreddo. I don't know if you recall, but in season 1, I did a show on frozen desserts. There are 2 types of frozen desserts, and they include churn frozen and still frozen. So if you'd like to go back and actually listen to that show, that might be a good idea to catch up. Churn frozen desserts include your typical ice creams, gelatos, sorbets, and sherbets. Churn frozen desserts get their creamy and light texture from air being constantly mixed into the custard base. This air is mixed in by using an ice cream machine, either hand-cranked or electric. But today, we will discuss the other type of frozen dessert, the still frozen dessert. Specifically, a class of frozen dessert known as the Semifreddo, which literally translated means half frozen, half cold, partially frozen, whatever you want to do. It sounds so much prettier if you say Semifreddo. Here in a still frozen dessert, there is no churning. There's no churning going on at all. So how does this frozen dessert get to be so light in texture? Well, the secret is the addition of whipped cream and even sometimes of meringue made with egg whites. The airiness is literally brought to the custard without any churning. So we bring the air to the custard instead of moving the custard to create the air. Really very simple, right? A typical Semifreddo contains eggs, most often the yolks, which are the building blocks of any fine custard, sugar, milk, and in a Semifreddo's case, whipped heavy cream. Sometimes a meringue is even created from the egg whites and also used to lighten the custard, although this is not as traditional. Flavorings are also added, and when you're done, it has the texture of a frozen mousse. Sounds yummy, right? A little history about the Semifreddo. It was created in Italy in the 19th century, but it really didn't become popular until the early 20th century. I sit up at night and I wonder, why? Why? How could this not have become the best thing ever? It sounds so fancy and posh. I have heard it referred to as the frozen dessert that is half as frozen and twice as easy. And boy, is that true. The typical Semifreddo begins with a cooked custard base made on top of the stove, much like any ice cream does. But that is where the comparison ends. This custard in a traditional churn frozen dessert, like an ice cream, would then be placed into an ice cream maker and churned at a very cold temperature until it was frozen. In a Semifreddo, this custard, which is flavored, would then be folded together with whipped cream and possibly meringue, and then poured into a mold like a loaf pan that was lined with plastic wrap. The pan would then be placed into the freezer for several hours until it was completely frozen. So it's in a loaf pan, you take it out of the freezer, you peel off your plastic wrap. How do you serve a Semifreddo? It's like a lump. Well, it really is such a simple dessert to make, and yet it's so impressive because of that loaf pan. I really believe it's how you serve it that makes it so fancy. Ice cream is typically scooped, right? Because ice cream, it's for everyone. It's for the masses. So common, so conventional. The Semifreddo, although it is easy to make, has a fancier air to it. Well, how does one serve a Semifreddo? You slice it, of course. When you line the loaf pan with plastic wrap, you want the plastic to hang over the sides to make it easier to remove it from the pan. And then you let it get a little bit defrosted, maybe about 15 minutes out of your freezer, and remove the plastic wrap after you've taken it out of the pan and serve it in nice thick slices. Before I give you my Semifreddo recipe, there are some very tasty hacks to make this half as frozen, twice as easy Semifreddo even easier. So instead of a cooked custard that you would make, Canned, sweetened, condensed milk is flavored and folded into whipped cream. That's even easier, right? And even quicker. I have 2 delicious recipes using this particular hack on my YouTube channel. So if you're interested, go view them and take a look. So here is my simple and yet so fancy chocolate and almond Semifreddo. In a medium heavy saucepan, you want to heat 2.5 cups of whole milk just to a simmer. Remember, that's just under the boil. And in a medium heat-proof mixing bowl, you want to whisk together 4 large egg yolks, 3/4 cup of granulated sugar, and 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. The cornstarch actually helps elevate the coagulation temperature of the egg yolks so that you really will not get too much curdling. It really is sort of a built-in check. Then you want to slowly whisk your hot milk into your egg mixture to temper those eggs and get them acclimated to the heat so they won't curdle. Next, you pour the whole thing back into that same saucepan. Now you place that saucepan back onto the heat and you want to whisk constantly over medium heat until the custard thickens and coats the back of a spoon. The cornstarch helps here too. It's sort of a twofer. You want to remove the pan from the heat and whisk in 1/2 cup of high-quality semi-sweet chocolate chips or finely chopped high-quality semi-sweet chocolate and whisk until that chocolate is completely melted. Then you want to stir in 1 cup of slivered almonds that have been toasted and a teaspoon of almond extract. You pour the whole mixture into a large bowl and chill it until it's very cold. Remember, anything that you want to put in the freezer, anything having to do with a frozen dessert, you want it chilled. You want to chill this custard base because we will be adding cold whipped cream to it later on. And whipped cream always does better in a colder environment. In the bowl of an electric mixer using the whip attachment, you want to beat 1.5 cups of cold heavy cream and a tablespoon of confectioner's sugar until stiff peaks form. Using a rubber spatula, you fold the cream into that cold custard until it's well blended. Spray your 9 by 5 by 3 inch loaf pan, and it can actually be slightly larger, could be slightly smaller. You can even make 2 loaf pans of Semifreddo. Why not? But you want to spray the pans with nonstick cooking spray and line them with pieces of plastic wrap so that the wrap hangs over the edges of the pan on all 4 sides. Then you pour the chocolate custard into the pan and fold the plastic wrap that hangs over, fold it over to cover the Semifreddo. Cover the top with aluminum foil and freeze it until it's very firm. This will take several hours or overnight, so don't lose patience and give it time. Never expect to serve a Semifreddo the same day you make it. Always wait that extra day. It also allows your flavors to blend. When you're ready to serve it, you take it out of the freezer, remove your foil, allow that Semifreddo to stay at room temperature for about 15 minutes or so, gently tug on the plastic wrap and pull the Semifreddo out and gently invert it onto a serving platter or even a cutting board, something that you can slice it on. You want to cut it in slices cut crosswise using a long, sharp knife, and you can even dip your long, sharp knife into hot water, wipe it clean so it's a little warm on the metal of the knife, and it will glide right through that gorgeous frozen dessert. It should serve at least 8 to 10 people, depending on how large your slices are. And if you would like this recipe in writing, it is available on my website, chefgailsokol.com. So if you've always wanted to make ice cream, but you don't have an ice cream maker, try a Semifreddo. Be a snob and slice your ice cream and call it a fancier ice cream. It's a Semifreddo. So I hope you try it because you won't be disappointed. On the next show, we'll discuss the Reuben. Thank you so much for listening. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, my YouTube channel, and my website, chefgailsokol.com.